Hey Warriors, happy Wednesday. I am so excited for today's guest. But before I introduce him, I want you all to smash that like button and subscribe button. If you want more content with our Warriors of the Week. So this week we have my good friend all the way from New York, Patrick Dodge. Patrick, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First, thank you very much for having me here today. I've known Brianna for, a few years now. Yeah, it's been a few years.
I started writing with you before I moved to town, so
that's right.
Over 4 years, because I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary in August.
That's right. I met you and your mother in the parking lot at ASCAP.
Yep.
That's right. Wow. Okay. Well, I've given that away that I am a songwriter. And Brianna said, she said, I'm from New York. I'm from upstate New York, where I live with my wife. I have 2 daughters, and I have a son. And I'd say we're a big happy family, but we're kind of spread out in different places. I'm a songwriter. I come to town, when I say town, I mean Nashville, on a regular basis to write with people like Brianna. I write Christian, I write country, I write pop, write a little bit of folk. But when it comes down to it...
So is there anything you don't write?
I don't write disco, although I like disco a lot. And actually, I like EDM too. No, I guess I'll try and do whatever I can as far as writing goes. But when it comes down to performing or singing and things that move me most, I think that would be Christian. I have 3 churches that I interact with, that I'm part of up where I live. And I'll sing praise and worship. I'm in the choir. I'm a lay leader. So that's kind of where my heart lies as far as performing music.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just dive right in because, well, that's what I like to do. I figure why not just rip the Band-Aid off. So the vlog is Warrior of the Week. So I invite people with very compelling stories, and I have heard Patrick's story, and he has got a compelling one. Can you share some of that with us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah. I guess the place to start would be to say that this January 3rd, I will have 20 years clean and sober. That's free of drugs, free of alcohol. And that decision that I made at that time, that was a life changer. I was in a very bad place and had been for a number of years. And I actually, my wife Lynn and our 2 daughters, and at that time they were very young, probably 5 and maybe 8, somewhere around there. But I left the family. I left them. And there isn't a day that goes by now where I don't feel a churn or a hurt or a pain or a regret inside for those choices that I made. And if there was a way to take them back, I would, but you can't. So prior to going into, and I'm not although it's an anonymous program, I'm with AA. That's where that's where I got sober continue to remain sober over these last 20 years. But the years prior to that, the 4 or 5 years prior to that, when I left my family, led me to a place of losing my job, losing my house, but not losing the house. I lost it because I just didn't care about anything. And I signed everything over to my wife Lynn, and walked away. I walked away as my daughters were crying, and then it didn't seem as painful as it is now. But I left everything. So I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost absolutely everything. And I ended up moving back into my father's house at age 40 with nothing at all. And I started to attend AA meetings. And through those meetings, one of the things that I found was that I wasn't alone, which is during those times when you're like at the bottom. It's nice to know that there are other people out there that are struggling as well, and you can work together and bond together to try and help each other. But I was in a place where suicide was an option. I was in a place where I would drive with open vodka bottles in my car, trying to get pulled over by the police so that I would be locked up and put away, and I wouldn't have to worry about anything. It was a very, very, very dark place. It took a long time to get to a point where things like suicide aren't a viable option of being able to move forward in life, or not move forward when things become too much. It took a long time. The interesting thing that happened throughout this, and the saving grace throughout this, aside from finding God and trusting in God, was Lynn, my wife, who she stood by my side the entire time that I went through this. If I was in trouble, and I was in trouble a lot, I could call her at any time of the day, night, it didn't matter. She would answer, she would help me, and she taught me about forgiveness. And that she allowed me to be part of the family still and be able to be there with my kids, to whatever degree I could, and to support me in trying to get clean and to try and build a new life, and or to even regain my life. And it was long and it was hard, and I spent a lot of years alone at night, awake, afraid, praying. Man, I prayed. Talk about the power of prayer. I prayed the Serenity Prayer. There were days that I prayed it 1,000 times a day, just so that I wouldn't veer off the path of trying to make myself feel better. And when I was in AA, they just kept saying, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And I remember one day, I was out walking. I walked a lot. I wasn't working, so I attended a lot of meetings and I walked a lot. And one day I was out walking, and I felt this lightness. I just felt okay. I felt good, and it lasted a short time. It was a short time, but I thought, maybe I can have more of this. Maybe I can do this again. And so I kept going back and I kept doing it. And day by day, a little bit longer it would last. A little bit longer I would feel better. Until finally I would have like a full day of feeling okay. And I don't know about worthy, but I felt lighter. I felt like I was someone again. And I got a job again, and I got a car again, and then slowly I was able to rebuild things, and I had many different apartments and places that I lived, and I finally ended up buying a house down the road from where I used to live with my wife, who is still at our old house, and I was able to see my kids. My kids began to trust me again. And I had no idea what I had done to them. They're still telling me things that I don't even remember happened. Because I was a daily heavy drinker. I was a daily vodka drinker, and 2 or 3 bottles a day. I mean, a lot. So they're still telling me things like, "No, you were a liar, Dad," or "No, you did say that to us and it wasn't true," or "You did things." I mean, I wasn't physically abusive, but I was a horrible person. So even now, I hear things. But about 4 years ago, and my wife and I, Lynn and I, although we are legally separated, we'd work together. We'd have each other's backs during this, and when I was finally able to, we would share Thanksgiving together. We would share Christmas together, or we would go on vacations together with the girls, or we would go camping together. And we finally got to a place where we realized, well, it's her probably more than me, where we ended up back together. And she allowed me to move back in and for us to be together, to be a couple again. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about, learning about forgiveness from her, I mean, there were even points where I had other people in my lives, and she would be kind to them and good to them, and when she had no reason to be. So now here we are 4 or 5 years later, and with 2 beautiful daughters, they're married. I've got a grandson now that Lynn and I go and visit. My wife and I go and visit, and that's what we call it. She calls me her husband. I call her my wife. We're sharing life together. We're supporting each other. We're together, and I am so blessed to be able to have that in my life, and to have my kids and my family back. And it's just so easy to throw all those things away. But I mean, through the grace of God, mm-hmm. and through the grace of my family and my wife, I am now, I'm the dad again. I'm the husband again. I'm a grandfather. I'm trusted and responsible, and they know that I will do things and that I'm good to my word. Do things come up from time to time, and we have to talk about it, and I have to face harsh realities of things that happen? Yeah, it's not over. I'm 20 years sober, but that could end. I've seen it happen so many times, so I don't take any of it for granted.
Right.
The blessings that have been given to me, and I work at it, and I think about it, and it's still, like you can see, it's still part of me. It's still something that I feel all the time, but I'm just so grateful. So that's my story. I mean, it's a story of someone who fell, someone who was helped and picked up, someone who found God again, someone who was forgiven through the love and the heart and the goodness of my wife and of my family, and allowing me to be here today and to tell that and to share that and to be able to be here with you. Yeah. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah. And one of the things when I hear your story is it's such a story of not just forgiveness, but the power of God's reconciliation, and overcoming. I don't know how often I've shared this, or if I've shared this on the vlog, but my brother David was a addict, and so addiction and recovery has always been very important to me, and I saw his struggle firsthand, and it's a daily battle, and it's a choice, and some people in my family don't agree with this, but I feel like his addiction coupled with some other things is what led him to the choice to take his life. And but I've that's part of the reason I asked Patrick to come on today, because for those of you that are watching that may be struggling or battling addiction, you can overcome it. Patrick overcame it, and it is a daily battle. It's a daily struggle. How would you say that has played on your mental health, if at all? Like, I gotta always tie it into the mental health.
Yeah. It's mental health.
'Cause I would say too, from like the having to overcome, that plays on the mental health, and also battling, the addiction, because that does play on with the addictive part of the brain, that does play on the mind. And so can you kind of speak to how it plays in both of those regards?
Yeah, it's and I'm still going through so much, and I have seen several different counselors, because I know that, or I believe, I don't know, but I believe that there are things that need to be addressed that maybe cause certain tendencies or certain things to happen. But those are all the things before. So my mental health now is, I'm very anxious all the time. It's hard for me to interact with people. And part of that is through anxiety. The other part of it is the not feeling worthy part. And when you've taken a fall, or I call it a fall, it was a decision. When I decided to be doing drugs, or I decided to be, drinking a lot, when you get into that, when you get to that place, and you start to think about, well, an option is suicide, or an option is to go to jail, and those become real options. I was aware enough, I hope, I guess I'm more aware now, that that's not right thinking.
Right.
I mean, it's just not right thinking at all.
Let me just pause for just a second. Those two things are never an option. Like, if you are starting to feel like those are an option, that's when you should, seek some help, whether it be from a friend, AA, or a guidance counselor. Well, a guidance counselor would be more in school, but whoever, if you're school age, guidance counselor, teacher, friend, family member, someone. So sorry, I just wanted to.
No, that's right.
Interject that.
No, and because in my story and in my thinking and where I've come from, those things have become just like part of what brought me to where I am. And at times, I may incorrectly and inadvertently speak of those things more cavalierly than I want to. So, yeah, those kind of thoughts are not normal, and you need to seek some type of help, because there are other options other than those things.
Yes.
But playing on mental health, absolutely. The fact that I still those things reverberate through me that happened before, that I feel a sickness in my stomach when I think about walking away from my family. Those things are still with me. So it isn't where hey, I'm going to have 20 years sober and you're cured. and
Right.
that's it. And there's nothing wrong. And you haven't done drugs for 20 years and there's nothing wrong. That's not the case. These are ongoing things and they need to be addressed. And they need to be addressed through
Right.
counseling and through speaking with others and talking things out. And hopefully you will reach a place where you feel, well, you will feel better, but where you feel a place where you feel more healed and more whole.
Right.
And I hope and I pray that those things vanish at some point. But even if they don't, I'm aware enough of me now and my surroundings now and the blessings that I have in my family that I know the right choices to make. And I know the triggers that set me off, and I know what to stay away from. One of the hardest things probably was just the fact that my wife tried to help me. She tried, but it's one of those things where you have to take the initiative. When they talk about hitting bottom,
Right.
I mean, you kind of need to do that and find your way out. But find help, find
right.
people, yeah.
And I know I was young during my brother's struggle, and I remember asking, well, why couldn't we help him? And a lot of times it would say they would say, well, he didn't want to, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you do have to kind of take some initiative and some accountability, and make those daily choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're small. I mean, for people that struggle with, addiction and mental health, it might just be getting out of bed, making your bed. Maybe it just starts with that, and that's a win. But you don't know what someone else's win is.
Oh, that is so true. It's funny you say that, and not funny you say that, because I clearly remember the first time when I remembered to brush my teeth, going through all that, and it was like, I brushed my teeth that day, and it was a big deal. It was a big thing. So all those little wins, it's true. You don't know what someone else is carrying. You don't know what their load is. You don't know what the weight that they have on them. And that's why it's so important, particularly today with everything that's going on, that we have compassion and caring for one another. It's so easy to be angered by stuff, but we don't know what brought that other person to whatever place they're at. But yeah, brushing teeth. That was it. When you said it, I was like, oh man, I brushed my teeth today. And I was like, I was a 40-year-old adult, and that was my win for the day. That was it.
And that might be, and you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
A win is still a win, no matter how big or small it is. And I quote this a lot. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but a mentor of mine, again, I say he's a mentor. I don't personally know him. I just look up to what he does. Says, Maurice Bernard, he says, I've overcome 100% of the time. And it's so true. When you look back and you think of giving up, at least for me, I don't know if this plays for you, but for me, it's like when I'm, and we'll be real, let's get candid. As I shared with Patrick a little earlier today, I've had a rough couple of weeks. It's just, I've been in a little bit of a funk. I've been struggling, not gonna lie. But, I look back and I'm like, I've overcome 100% of the time. Why do I think this time's gonna be any different?
Yeah.
And I'm, you've overcome 100% of the time. You're sitting here.
Yeah, here I am.
So, yeah. This has been good. And thank you for being so vulnerable and really diving in. I know it is tough, and I appreciate you, but sharing your story. And it's so important also to me because, substance abuse is accounted for in 50% of all suicides. And so that's a big factor in a lot of the suicides. So I really, want to start talking more about like recovery and stuff like that as well. And I will be linking some different links in the description for like resources if you are battling addiction. And I can't believe we are just about out of time, just got a few more minutes. On a lighter note,
Yes.
is there any exciting stuff for you to share? I know you're a writer, but like, is there any like music stuff that we can be excited for on the horizon that you can share?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So.
Because I'll put information for that so they can hear your amazing songs.
All right. So. Home Free.
Home Free.
There's a group called Home Free. There's a new album that is coming out on November 4th. I've got a song on that was co-written with Jeffrey East and Tim Faust. And then I've got another song coming out on their album that'll come out in 2023 that was written with Jeffrey East and Tim Faust. I've got a song coming out. Tyler Bryant is releasing a song mid to end October. That I'm a co-writer on. Catherine Shipley has got 3 songs. One song that's up for the Josie Awards.
Wow.
On October 23rd at I think the award shows at the Opry.
I think so, yeah.
So we have a song that's up for 5 or 6 awards there called Rise Above. And then I've got 2 other songs coming out from her. And it's been a really good year for me, being a writer for a long time, to have things finally start to move forward. And I'm so blessed. If it wasn't for the path that I've taken and that brought me here, these things wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. Or if I had made different choices. So I'm very grateful and very excited. And thanks for the plug.
Yeah, of course, always. And I will give, it's kind of old for me, but I'll give our song a plug too. You can check out the song we co-wrote that's on my Warrior in Me album called Every Time. Yeah, so you can check that out. That was that the first song or the second song we wrote?
I think it was the second.
The second, that's right. Yep. Yeah. Should we share the story about it?
Okay.
For some light, to lighten the episode a little bit, since we talked real heavy stuff. Yeah. I always like to end on a light note.
Okay.
All right, so this was our second time writing, and sometimes I often get asked, what's it like to be in a co-write? And it can be tough sometimes, mm-hmm. because, we're tossing out ideas and basically just seeing if something sticks. And Patrick and I we've written a lot since then, but this was our second write. And it was one of those things where we're just throwing things to the wall and nothing was seeming to stick. So I was trying to be funny and, lighten things up, but Patrick here wasn't quite sure about it, whether I was kidding. So we were trying to rhyme with thine, and I was like, I got it. Pine. Smells like pine. And I was totally kidding. And Patrick, being the sweetheart that he is, was like, oh, okay. I was kidding. He's like, oh, good.
I had no idea she was kidding. So you try to be generous and well, that's an interesting way to look at that. Thank goodness she was joking.
And I think in the same song was the O, when we were trying to rhyme, have an E rhyme, and I'm on Rhyme Zone, which is what I use to find all my rhymes. Totally love Rhyme Zone. If you're a singer-songwriter, totally recommend Rhyme Zone. And I'm sitting here minding my business, and I say, "Oh!" And he goes, "No, E." And I'm like, "No, oh, I got something." And the line before talked about being trapped. And I'm like, well, when you're trapped, you need a key. And he goes, "Oh." So, yeah. Those are some of the funny stories behind.
Yeah, behind the scenes. Now every now and then when we're right here, oh,
yeah,
and I know what it means now.
Right, and sometimes there's a lot of weight behind the woes now, and I'm like, oh boy, is this one really worth a woe? I'm not sure about that. But yes, be sure to check out our song Every Time. It's available on all streaming platforms, and I'll even put a link to that in the description below, along with how you can find Patrick on socials and all of that good stuff. But until next time, friends, I want you to remember that you matter, you are loved, and you are a warrior. Bye.